everyone, and welcome to this deep dive. Today we're going to be doing a super quick rundown of some recent cybersecurity news. Just a quick download to keep you in the loop. It's been a crazy couple weeks. A real mix of attacks and vulnerabilities. But also, some good stuff happening too.
Yeah, we've seen it all. Ransomware in some unexpected places. Even a reminder that our cars can be targets these days.
Yeah, let's break it all down. Starting with ransomware, we hear about it constantly, but it seems like it's spreading, like in unsettling ways. Who would have thought oil fields would be on the radar of cybercriminals?
It's a wake-up call, that's for sure. Just last month, on October 29th, New Park Resources got hit. They're a major supplier to the oil and gas industry. It really shows that no industry is immune to these threats. Luckily, they had a good plan in place. They contained the breach, followed protocol, so they're expecting minimal financial impact.
So a close one, but not a catastrophe. But then there's Finastra, a huge player in the financial tech world. They provide services to thousands of institutions, and they had a database breach that hackers are claiming responsibility for. And get this, it's their second ransomware attack. They were hit back in 2020, too.
That's a really good point. It makes you wonder why some companies get hit over and over again. Sometimes it's because they didn't fully fix the problems from the first attack, like patching a leaky pipe with a Band-Aid. It might work for a while, but it's not a permanent fix.
So a temporary fix can make you feel safe when you're really not.
Exactly. Other times, companies might think it won't happen again and let their guard down. Or the attackers see them as an easy target, because they already know their systems and weaknesses. The Finastra case is really worrying, because they handle sensitive financial data. It shows how important it is to be vigilant and to have strong cybersecurity, especially in critical infrastructure.
Speaking of critical infrastructure and vulnerabilities, this next story is like something out of a spy movie. Salt Typhoon, the group linked to Chinese intelligence, has been busy.
They definitely have.
They hacked into major U.S. telecom providers. Now, a government agency is telling its employees to limit phone use to only essential calls. It really shows you how cyberattacks can have real-world consequences.
You're absolutely right. This isn't just about stealing data. It's about messing with communication and potentially impacting national security. Imagine critical communication networks going down during an emergency. It shows the chaos these attacks can cause.
It makes you think twice about relying only on your smartphone. So what can we do to protect ourselves, especially when we're talking about these sophisticated state-sponsored actors?
Well, being aware is a good first step. Think before you click on things. Use strong passwords and turn on two-factor authentication whenever you can. But when it comes to attacks this big, we also need strong cybersecurity at a national level.
So it's not just about individual responsibility, but also about governments and organizations stepping up. On a different note, but equally disturbing, the FBI is investigating those racist texts sent to African Americans after the recent election. It's awful how technology can be used to spread hate.
Yeah, it's a reminder that technology can be used for both good and bad. It can be used to amplify harmful ideas. And it's crucial to recognize and address that.
It's definitely a sobering thought. But let's move on to some of the more sneaky tactics hackers are using. Those warnings about opening suspicious email attachments. Well, it seems like things are getting even trickier.
Oh, they are. The methods are always changing. We're seeing more malware hidden in ZIP files now. They use a technique called concatenation. Imagine you're reading a book, but someone snuck in extra pages with malicious code hidden in them. Some archives managers only read the first part, so they miss the malicious code that's deeper inside.
So even if your antivirus scans the ZIP file and says it's safe, there could still be something bad hidden in it.
That's what's scary about it. It's like a Trojan horse, looking harmless on the outside, but dangerous on the inside. And it's not just ZIP files. There's this malicious Python package called Fabrice that was found recently.
Fabrice? What is that?
It was disguised as a legitimate tool called Fabric that developers use a lot. It was hiding on PyPI for years. That's a repository for Python software. Anyone who downloaded it thinking they were getting a helpful tool actually gave this malware access to their systems.
So for years, people were downloading this, thinking they were getting something useful. It's like unknowingly inviting a thief into your home. How did something like that go undetected for so long?
It shows how clever some of these attackers are. They take advantage of our trust in sources that seem legitimate. And in this case, it wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. Fabrice was actively stealing AWS credentials, which give you access to cloud computing resources. It was downloaded over 37,000 times before it was caught.
Over 37,000 downloads. That's a lot of potential damage. And speaking of scary things hiding in plain sight, It seems even something as simple as an Excel file can be dangerous.
Yeah, you're talking about the Remco's RAT.
The Remco's RAT. That sounds ominous. What is it exactly?
RAT stands for Remote Access Trojan. It's a nasty piece of malware. Hackers are using a vulnerability in older versions of Microsoft Office to deliver it through Excel files. If they install it, it gives attackers control over their computer.
So they can basically do anything they want with your computer, steal data, spy on you, even take control of your webcam?
Pretty much. And they're using tricky ways to avoid detection, so it's even harder to protect against. It's like having a ghost in your machine doing things you can't control.
Okay, so we've got ransomware, espionage, sneaky malware. It seems like the list of cyber threats never ends. What else should we be aware of?
Well, this next one might surprise you. Cars are vulnerable too.
Wait, our cars? Seriously? You don't mean those self-driving cars, right?
Not just those. Remember those unpatched flaws in Mazda's infotainment system we talked about? They're actually pretty serious. Hackers could use them to take control of some of the car's functions. All they need is a USB drive.
Hold on, you mean someone could hack my car with a USB drive? That's a bit unsettling, to say the least. Suddenly that check engine light doesn't seem so bad?
It definitely raises questions about the security of connected devices, not just cars. As more everyday things become internet connected, like thermostats and refrigerators, it creates more opportunities for cybercriminals.
It's like our whole lives are becoming one big target, so what can we do? Should we all stop driving?
That's not really practical, is it? But you're right, it shows how important it is to stay informed about potential vulnerabilities and to make sure our devices are updated with the latest security patches. The Mazda vulnerability affects models from 2014 to 2021, with specific software versions. So if you own a Mazda from that time, it's worth checking to see if you're affected.
Checking for software updates on a car. Who would have thought? It's a reminder that we can't be complacent about cybersecurity, even with something as familiar as our cars.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just a Mazda thing. We saw something similar with Veeam. It's a popular backup and replication software. It had a critical vulnerability. It could allow attackers to remotely execute code on vulnerable servers. It's known as CVE 2024-40711.
CVE 2024-40701. Sounds pretty technical.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's basically a unique identifier for this specific vulnerability. It's like a fingerprint for a security flaw.
So it's like a universal language for security issues.
Exactly. And what's worrying about this Veeam vulnerability is that even though a patch was released back in September, multiple ransomware groups are already using it.
So even though there's a fix available, some people haven't updated their systems, and now they're vulnerable.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that happens a lot. Cyber criminals are always looking for these unpatched systems, and they often exploit them before organizations can catch up. It shows how important it is to have a good patch management process in place. It's like making sure your house is locked up. You wouldn't leave your doors wide open, right?
Definitely not. It sounds like patching is one of those things that's easy to put off, but the consequences can be pretty bad.
Absolutely. It's one of those basic cybersecurity things that can make a big difference. And it's not just about patching individual devices, it's about having a whole approach to security. That includes regular updates, strong passwords, and awareness training for employees.
So it's about creating a culture of security, where everyone understands the importance of protecting themselves and the organization. It's a team effort, right?
Exactly. Everyone has a role to play in cybersecurity. But it's not all bad news. There are some good things happening in cybersecurity too. Remember that pledge from those big tech companies to build security into their products from the ground up.
You mean the Secure by Design initiative? To be honest, I was a bit skeptical at first. It sounded good, but I wasn't sure they'd actually do it.
Well, I'm happy to say they're actually making good progress. We're seeing real changes, especially from companies like Amazon, Fortinet, and Microsoft.
Okay, I'm listening. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, Amazon Web Services, or AWS, now requires multi-factor authentication for all administrator accounts. So even if someone steals your password, they can't access your account without a second form of verification, like a code sent to your phone.
That's a good step. Passwords are so easy to steal these days.
Exactly. And AWS is also supporting those FIDO2 passkeys. They're like little physical security keys that plug into your computer or phone. They're much harder for hackers to steal or copy.
I've heard of those. They sound much more secure than regular passwords. But are people actually using them?
The numbers look good. AWS has reported almost 700,000 new MFA enrollments since April 2024. That's a big increase. It shows that people are starting to take multi-factor authentication seriously.
That's good to hear. What about Fortinet? What are they doing?
Fortinet has been focusing on automatic updates, especially for their entry-level devices. You know the ones that often get overlooked when it comes to security patches? They're also making MFA mandatory for all cloud service users.
Smart move. Automatic updates take the hassle out of patching, and those default passwords on entry-level devices are just asking for trouble. Now, what about Microsoft? They're a big player in the tech world, so I'm curious to see what they're doing.
Oh, Microsoft has been busy with their Secure Future initiative. One of the biggest things they've done is start publishing CVEs, even for their cloud services.
Wait, hold on. What are CVEs again?
Remember those unique identifiers for vulnerabilities we talked about? CVE stands for Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures. It's a system for publicly disclosing security flaws.
Ah, right. So Microsoft is being more open about the vulnerabilities in their software.
Exactly. It's a good step because it helps researchers and security professionals identify and address those vulnerabilities faster.
It also shows they're not trying to hide anything.
That's right. And they're not stopping there. They're also standardizing their identity technologies across all their products to reduce authentication errors.
Right.
And make it easier for users to manage their security settings.
So they're trying to make security simpler for users.
Yes, because complex security measures can sometimes be a barrier to adoption. And on top of that, they've made MFA mandatory for their Azure Entra and Intune services. They're really going all in on security.
It's good to see these big tech companies taking real steps to improve security. It's like they're finally realizing that security can't be an afterthought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not just these big companies. We're seeing a growing trend across the industry to prioritize security from the very beginning of the development process, which is great.
So we're moving towards a future where security is built into technology, not just added on later.
That's the goal. It's a more proactive approach to security. And it's much more effective than trying to fix vulnerabilities after they've already happened.
It's like building a house with a strong foundation, rather than trying to fix cracks later on.
That's a great analogy.
So we've got a lot to be cautious about in cybersecurity. But it's also good to see some positive changes happening. But let's be real, we're not out of the woods yet, right?
Not even close. The cyber threat landscape is constantly changing. Hackers are always finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. But it's important to remember that the good guys are fighting back. And we're making progress. It's a constant battle. But we're learning and adapting as we go.
It's a bit like a chess game, with each side trying to outsmart the other.
So what does all this mean for our listeners? What's the key takeaway from today's deep dive?
I think the most important thing is to be aware. Stay informed about the latest threats and vulnerabilities. Don't just rely on your IT department or security software to protect you. Take charge of your own cybersecurity.
So it's about being proactive and taking responsibility for our own security instead of just hoping for the best.
Exactly. It's like wearing a seatbelt. It's not perfect, but it significantly reduces your risk. It's a simple analogy, but it makes sense. We wouldn't drive without a seatbelt. So why would we use the internet without taking basic cybersecurity precautions?
Well said.
Yeah, it really is about making those smart choices and, being aware of the risks.
Exactly. And it's not just about protecting yourself. It's about your family too, your friends, your community.
Because we're all connected these days.
That's right. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of cybersecurity, we want to leave you with something to think about.
Out of all the stories we talked about today, which one surprised you the most?
Yeah. And what can you start doing today? To be more aware of cybersecurity could be something small, like turning on two-factor authentication.
Yeah.
Or being more careful about clicking links in emails.
Yeah, those small steps can really make a difference.
Absolutely. And if it all seems overwhelming, remember, you don't have to become a cybersecurity expert overnight.
Yeah, just start with the basics and go from there.
There's a ton of information online. And a lot of organizations offer free cybersecurity training.
And if anything we talked about today really caught your attention, don't hesitate to do some more research. We've only just scratched the surface. There's a whole world of information out there.
That's what's so great about learning, isn't it? There's always more to discover, especially in a field like cybersecurity that's always changing.
For sure. And who knows, maybe some of these topics will lead to another deep dive. We could look at ransomware prevention strategies, or the impact of AI on cybersecurity, or even the ethical side of all this.
The possibilities are endless. But for now, we hope this quick tour has given you the knowledge and awareness to be a little safer and more confident online.
Well said. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there.
See you in our next deep dive.